Hiya. So I wanted to talk to you guys this morning about authenticity, and all I want to do is bring to the table is a little bit of awareness around that. I don't watch commercial television. I haven't since 2019, since all the fear mongering around C19 started to happen. And I chose at that point that I was no longer going to watch the news or anything like that because I believed that they were trying to keep us in a fear state. Turns out I wasn't too far off the mark, so I don't regret that, but I've never actually returned back to commercial television and or commercial radio. However, I do have access to social media and things like that, and in that access is advertising. That advertising, I actually stopped yesterday just to actually look at the advertising, and I kind of wanted to really look at the advertising, like what is it that they're trying to sell me here. Now I can't even remember the product, if I'm being completely fair, because what I was focused on was the way that the woman was actually speaking. So when I talk about authenticity, I want you to think about the tone of voice and the facial expressions that the person is actually giving you. And the reason that I'm actually kind of bringing this out is because a tone of voice and a facial expression is a sure sign of the level of authenticity. So listen to their tone of voice, watch their facial expressions. And likewise, when I first started making some videos and stuff like that, I actually went back down and looked at some of the videos that I was posting and how I was showing up. And whilst I truly believed that I was still being authentic, I was authentic for where I was at that moment. So the more I've grown, the more I've learned, the more authenticity I've been able to project. So because I guess that comes from a safety within as well. So I'm working with what feels right within me in order to project the message in a more authentic way each time I present. So this is another one of those situations. So I'm able to sit here now and say, actually, I really wanted to film this morning, but I ended up taking notes on it, but I didn't film it because I was sitting in my dressing gown. And whilst I did have that thought, I'm like, oh, this is super authentic. There's still part of me that wants to be a little bit human as well. So I did go and have a shower before making this video. But we're talking about, so authenticity is directly linked to vulnerability. So the more authentic you are, obviously the more vulnerable you have to be. And vulnerability is a really hard place to sit. And we often talk about how vulnerability is a hard place to sit. But I can assure you that the more you sit in vulnerability, the easier it becomes to sit in that. And additionally, when we sit in vulnerability, it's a fear of the way that other people may perceive us. When you are authentic and when you have that level of vulnerability, there is nothing that anybody could say to me that I haven't already thought myself, but I also have that in a place. And so, they become a you issue and more of a reflection on where that person sits versus where it sits for me, because I'm very sure of who I am because I have done a lot of work to sit in this space, and I'm still growing. So I'm not saying that I'm any level of done, but yeah. So that was something that I wanted to bring up. But pay attention to the content that you are listening to, whether it is a podcast, whether it's music or any of those sorts of things. So your soul and your cells are absorbing all of those things that we consume. So we are what we eat, or we are what we consume. And that comes down to food, beverage, and also what we listen to, what we watch. So what we see, what we hear, what we feel. It's all of those things. And I want to talk to you briefly about a connection that I had made, and that is that in the instance of, say, eating a corn chip. So you open the packet of corn chips and you eat the corn chip, and you keep eating the corn chip until the bottom of the bag and it's done. And the reason that you can continue to eat those corn chips, the reason that you can continue to eat those corn chips is because there is no nutritional value to it. So it's basically you're eating a deficit. So you're enjoying the momentary eating of the corn chip, but there is no nutritional value to it. So additionally, you keep eating more and more of the corn chips to try and satisfy that need. But every corn chip you eat is the equivalent of like the first corn chip that you've eaten. Now you think about a hearty meal or a healthy meal. You sit down and you actually might struggle to eat that last mouthful because it is so nutritional, it is so fulfilling. Now, if we think about things in our life as corn chips or a nutritional meal, are we feeding our soul corn chips or are we feeding our soul nutritional meals? So think about the things that you are consuming, the music that you're listening to, the podcast that you're listening to, the content that you're listening to, the people that are around you. Have a look at the advertising that you are being presented. Is that person being authentic or not? And I am an 80s kid, so growing up in the 80s and 90s, obviously we had telephones that were still attached to walls. And the reason I want to bring this up is because are we living authentically or are we living with a telephone voice? And the reason I want to say it like that is because I remember as a child that no matter what was going on in the house, you know, mum would be running around or yelling at us kids or whatever. The minute that phone would ring, hello, it was a different tone of voice. It was how she wanted to present to the person at the other end, irrespective of what was going on. Now, if she had picked up and gone, what? Because that was the headspace that she was in, then, I mean, yes, granted, that possibly could have been authentic. Also, maybe not even picking up the phone would have been authentic. But in that moment, we choose inauthenticity because that's the way that we have been conditioned to receive and give information. So if receiving and giving information is totally inauthentic, then advertising is something now that needs to be genuinely looked at. I won't buy a product if I believe that the person is totally ingenuine. Do they believe in the product that they're selling me, and are they able to sell it to me from an authentic standpoint? So that for me is across the board, whether it's a product, a human, a food, a podcast, a YouTube thing, whatever it may be. If it's not authentic and it doesn't resonate, I am not going to allow that to infiltrate my cells, because that means that I'm going to have to clean out all that dirty stuff afterwards, because this is the conditioning that we have been sitting in. Awareness is key. So are you showing up authentically? Are the people in your life showing up authentically? Are the conversations that you're having authentic and enriching, soul fulfilling? Are they nutritional? Or are they depleting you in some way, shape or form? Who are the healthy meals and who are the corn chips? I love you. Bye.